Hi everybody, this is Terry from Bonsai Tree again, and today we are privileged once again to have Richard Wright in the studio, if we can call this a studio. It's actually the garage, but welcome, and I'm really looking forward to the second part in this series of working on collected wild olives. And if you haven't seen the first part in the series, I would suggest that you do check it out. And the intention with this series is to just really walk you through all the steps and the processes that you can or should go through after you've collected your tree, your olive. And so in the future we'll be adding more parts to this. This is just part 2. So if you don't want to miss it, be sure to subscribe, and then you'll be notified for the future episodes. But I'm going to let Richard take you through just a brief summary of what we did the last time. So that it just makes a little bit more sense when he starts or launches into part 2, which we'll be doing today. Thanks very much, Richard.
Stunning. Thank you very much, Terry. Thanks for having me again, and thanks for watching. So it's all about carving, and it's about cleaning up the deadwood. But we need to have an important conversation about that. I've seen far too many wild olives, in fact far too many trees, bonsais, where the carving becomes the main attraction, the main feature. And whilst some people might really enjoy that, it's not for me. I want to try and produce a tree or try and help a tree to become the very best version of itself. It must look natural. It must look like something that, from a style point of view, it must look like a wild olive. From the carving point of view, the deadwood, it must look like the deadwood on a wild olive. Otherwise, what's the point? So why do we do carving as the next step? And that's a pretty obvious answer, in that the last thing I want to do, once the tree is styled and we're about 5 years in after we've wired it and developed foliage pads and developed a wonderful canopy, then go in with some power tools or some carving equipment and then go and try and carve the tree. That's just nonsensical. So the sooner you can get the carving done, the better. But you have to wait for the tree to have recovered after digging it from the fields. And it needs to be strong. As I mentioned last time, working on a tree like this, if you're going to be doing some extensive carving with big equipment, you're going to want to secure the tree into the pot and make sure that it doesn't move. You don't want to break any of the small roots. We don't have to do that to this tree. And the reason for that is because the carving I'm going to do today is purely to clean up cuts that have when it was originally collected from the felt, just to clean up areas. So we'll see here, this is quite a large cut that was made when Terry collected the tree in the wild, and he sealed it nicely, which is incredibly important to do. He sealed it with a good sealer as well. As you can see, what I normally do when I dig is I'll seal the trees immediately, and as I cut it, I'm sealing straight away because I don't want the tree to lose any moisture. I'm going to seal it with a relatively inexpensive sealant that I'm going to buy at a nursery center. When I come home, I recut the tree, just take off a little bit so that I can soak it in water, and it allows the water to literally seep out. And then when I pot it up, I'm going to seal it again. And that to me is a really big part of the success. And Terry's done that nicely. And what you've seen here is that the branches have grown right out of the tips. In other words, because it's been sealed so nicely, there's been no dieback at all. And the tree has grown literally from the tops. Right, so the question is, what am I actually going to do with this? Well, I can't leave it like this because it's very obvious that the little trunk was cut off. So before I get going, the last thing I want to explain is just in terms of making something believable. So there is a piece here, it's a trunk that unfortunately didn't make it. This little part died off. So what are we going to do with this? I've got a couple of choices. I can either cut it out completely and make it look as if it was a branch that died, and because the tree rotted, it rotted right back and then almost hollowed out, so there was a hollow left in the tree. But the amazing thing about olives is that although the live wood is quite soft and it's pretty easy to carve, and it's almost in some ways a little bit fibrous, As soon as it dies, it becomes incredibly hard. So you'll speak to a lot of people who've carved olives who've lost tools and lost bits, and we'll get to that just now. But it's a very, very hard wood to carve. And the nice thing about that is that the dead wood features, or whatever you do on the tree, is going to last, especially if you protect it. It'll last for a very long time. So that gives us a very good option to produce deadwood on a tree that looks like it tells a bit of a story. So this is going to be something that it's a branch that would have died off. It's going to have decayed. It's going to be a couple of years into that process, and we need to try and show that. So there are a lot of classical purists that balk at the idea of power tools, and would far rather use hand tools, and there's some amazing options available. This is just not a tree I'm prepared to use hand tools on, especially not with the dead sections. On the live sections, yes, you can peel back and you can take your time, but on these dead sections where I'm going to have to clean up, it's just not a job for hand tools. And I think we can get a really very pleasing result from power tools. So I think the next thing we need to do is get onto exactly what we're going to use and what's best for the tree. So what I'm going to be using here is a combination of a die grinder, 2 Dremels, and then a whole bunch of bits which I'm going to get to in detail. And then the other thing that I might or might not use is the flexible shaft. And this is pretty cool because you can really get into places. So we'll see if we use that or not. So one of the best discoveries that I've made in my entire bonsai career are these bits called nibblers that I bought from Terry a couple of months back. And it's part of the reason why I'm here, in that I enjoy it so much. I love working on olives. Terry's seen what I've done with the bits that I bought from him, and here we are. So what are they? They're nibblers, and they come from the UK, extremely high quality, made by somebody specifically for bonsai. The bits are supposedly for cutting steel. They last incredibly long, but the details are on Terry's site. It's bonsaitree.co.za. Go and have a look, and all the explanations are there. But just a quick overview. There are 2 different bit sizes I'm going to be using. We've got these 2 that literally fit into the Dremel, and you need to make sure that it is a Dremel. I made the mistake, and I'm happy to admit this. I had a Proxon. I've got a Proxon. I've been using it for many years. I thought that the bit was going to work. It didn't, but I purchased a Dremel, and I haven't looked back. So these literally fit straight into the Dremel, and they come in 2 different shapes. This is a little extender which just gives you a little bit more length. As you will see, the end fits onto the shaft of a Dremel, and it fits the maxi bits. The bits, there are 2 different types. The one is the T shape for triangular, and I don't know if you can see that close, but the little bit on the end is a triangle. And that cuts quite a sharp little line, and you'll see when I use it a little bit later, you can get an incredible detail with it. And if it does ever blunten, it's as simple as just loosening it and moving the triangle one along. Then this one here is a 6 millimeter. It goes straight into the die grinder. So this is a little mini, and that will go into, and this would fit a Proxon for most of the other standard little machines, but this obviously works with the Dremel too. And this one is R for round. You see it's got a rounder bit, and that cuts a more of a groove, a sort of circular groove. So those are the different variations, but here's the best part. I haven't used mine on a die grinder. I've got a Fordham, I control the speed, but with a Dremel, working on old olives, I haven't had the need to use anything bigger. Imagine carving an olive, some of the wood that is as thick as my thigh, with a little bit like this, and with ease. It is stable. It doesn't. There's no shuddering, no jarring. It's literally. In fact, I wrote a review. You can go and find it on Terry's site. It literally is like slicing through butter. So over my time, I've used so many different tools. I've sourced tools. I've gone with Arbitech tools. I've gone with chainsaw bits. You name it, I've tried it. But what I really can tell you, and this is not Terry asking me to say this, these tools are phenomenal. But then this is something I will always use specifically towards the end, is a wire brush. The brass works pretty well. You can get a steel one as well, but I find that's a little bit too hard. And the best thing about this, it gives us an amazing grain. We can find the fine little lines of a grain, which just tidies up the carving. And then burrs, I've always used burrs. There's so many of them on the market, but it's worthwhile paying for something good. And these I'll use a little bit later, just some of the cleanup, and they just blunten the edges of some of the carving a little bit. And with these you'll find, and this one I've burnt, that if the wood sort of packs up in between the little burrs, is you just burn it off and then take a wire brush and scrape it off. So this is one of the most important parts of this video, and we're going to be talking about safety. You'll notice that I've got a pretty heavy duty apron on. That's just going to help more than anything else to keep my clothes clean. But then the really important stuff, it's the one I worry about the most, is protecting my eyes. I like to get in there, I like to be able to see the detail, and there's nothing worse than trying to work like this because you're trying to make sure that you don't lose an eye. So good eye protection is actually critical. What happened to me when I turned 50 is life said here, for the gift of turning 50, have reading glasses. So I actually land up using these, and I'm happy that way. I can see what I'm doing better, and it protects my eyes. So I'm always going to have some eye protection. The next thing that I like to do, especially if I'm carving old wood, if it's very dusty, it's wood that needs to be cleaned, and we're going to talk about that. Carving's not a once-off thing at all. It's something that you revisit. And if things are very dusty and I'm brushing, I'm going to be breathing in a lot of the dust, and that's not great. So I will always use something like this. It's something we've all got used to. Whether it's a buff, I don't even need to talk to you about face coverings, because I think we've covered that, no pun intended. Something like this is always a good idea, especially if you're working inside. It's just earmuffs. I find though with a die grinder, makes a lot of noise. Sometimes I need that, but working with a Dremel, I don't normally find the need. But play around, whatever's going to make you feel most comfortable. And if you're carving for a long time, then maybe it's well worth it. I found that what gets me more than anything else is the eyes, the nose, and then carving for a long time. When you're finished, your hands end up feeling like you've been doing something for a while because of the movement. So from a hand point of view, it's always pretty wise. It's a good idea to have some protection for your hands. We're using very safe tools, we're using safe bits. And then this one thing from a safety point of view is, please go and use tools that are designed for carving wood. And specifically bonsai, things that have been tried and tested. There are lots of bits out there. There are router bits. There's a plethora of stuff out there. And in the beginning, I tried everything because I was trying to look for the cheapest versions, and I was trying to make do because there wasn't a lot available 20 odd years ago. Now it's different. There's tons out there. But please go and use things that are specific towards bonsai and carving, even if it's not. Sorry, Terry. Even if it's not Terry's, is go and find that stuff. Talk to people, but it's critical. And the last thing you want to do is go and ruin one of your prized trees, something that you've dug up. You've waited 2 years before you're carving it. You've got a vision for where it wants to go, and you end up making a complete mess because you're using the wrong tools. So from a safety point of view, from a tool point of view, you want to make sure that you've ticked all the boxes before you even start. What we've done now is just pull the branches back with cable ties loosely so we're not damaging anything, but to make sure that I can get in without the branches being in the way. So I'm ready to get into the carving. Obviously the bit works only in one direction, so at the moment it's going to be carving down into whatever I'm carving. If I come and stand on this side, now we're carving back up. Carving down is quite nice because what's going to happen is that the shavings are going to be move out in this direction. If I'm carving this way around, the shavings are going to be all over the place. I kind of use both and I don't worry too much. I'm going to get dirty, there are going to be shavings everywhere, and that's quite okay. So let's get going. So what I'm going to do here is, what's quite important is I like to carve. I like the wood to, I know it sounds weird, but to speak to me as I'm carving. I want to work with the wood, I want to work with the grain. I don't like carving against the grain because it just doesn't look natural. So with the T, you'll see tiny little cuts, and it works pretty well. So we're literally just going to, what I want to see, okay, so what I'm looking for here, and I pretty much guessed it, is this is all dead. So at some point in time, and I want to get rid of all of the bark over the dead section. So I pretty much think that we're going to go down, by the looks of things, I'll pick at this a little bit, but I think that this whole section going down here is going to be dead. But you'll notice that I start at the top, I'm working my way down, because what I don't want to do is just to start carving into live wood. So I'm just going to start exploring a little bit here. I need to reduce this section anyway, and I don't want to go past, if I don't have to, over live bark for this particular section. So what I've done here is I've created a hollow, and that's one of the most amazing things about the nibblers, is literally, as you'll see, you have to get right in behind here and on this side here. And what happens with wood is that very often it hollows from the inside out. And that wood, when water gets in, especially on something like this, I would imagine a tree that a much bigger trunk that died off, and as it died back, water seeped in and started to rot from the inside. And very often the outer layers protect it on the outside, but the inside starts to rot. But what's quite important is whenever you're carving, is that you leave a part where water can drain out. So I don't want this tree to continue rotting into the middle, so I want literally the water is going to drain off. What will happen with something like this, where literally I've hollowed, and you'll find with deadwood that it hollows normally from the inside, and then there are layers, so consecutive layers. And so what we've done here is created, quite hard for you to see there, but there's another layer there and a layer on the inside, and I'll do with some finer carving, one or two. So we're creating that idea of the layers that have rotted from the inside out. But what's quite nice with something like this is that you'll see that the shadows will make it much darker on the inside, which is going to create quite a lot of interest. And if you look at olives, you'll notice a lot of the time that is exactly what they do. They start to rot from the inside out. And that's pretty much what I'm wanting to replicate here. So I've just changed bits now using this burr, and I want to go and clean up a little bit and also give it a little bit more detail and texture. And I'm going to be able to do this. It's almost like drawing a bit with a pencil or with a pen. I've got a lot more control, and I can get into places that I can't with a nibbler. So for this little cut here, and literally it's this piece here, I want to make it look a little bit more natural, and I want to get some more of the taper in, and all I'm going to use for it is a wire brush. So one of the things that I haven't spoken about, and it's something that a lot of people, especially if you're not used to carving or haven't carved a lot, is you want to make sure you get one shot at this. So you want to make sure that you get it right the first time. A lot of people will draw on the tree with a black pen or a colored pen, but I find that the best thing that works for me is just plain old chalk. And the reason for that is because if I don't like what I've done, I can literally get a wet cloth or use my finger and get rid of it and start again. It's just that easy. It's not permanent. So white chalk works for me, and I'm going to go ahead and figure out what we're going to do here. And the reason for that is that you'll notice that this is quite a thick piece. For this, the apex of this little trunk to develop into the size that is going to make this believable, it's going to take a lot of time. So we're going to help that process along. You might remember in the last video that we chatted about potentially removing this little branch or this trunk. And Terry and I, after lots of consultation and looking at the tree, have figured that we don't want to do that. And the reason for that is that we don't want this just to be another wild olive. A lot of them are styled similarly with these big trunk bases. There are not a lot of clumps where it's all from the same base, and they all the branches come from low down, and I think we've got a wonderful potential to have quite a full canopy, and this trunk is definitely going to add to that. And then the other thing that Terry pointed out, rightly so, is it's great to have trees where people, there's an interest and they want to lean in and have a look and see what's behind, and visually it's far more appealing. Right, so this side here I want to reduce quite a lot, so I'm probably going to reduce this area. I might even bring it down there, because the sap for this trunk is going to come from the bottom there, and this is going to be fed from the bottom there, so I don't mind taking out whatever's here. So this section here I'm going to take out, and then this section here I'm going to bring round, and I might even, we'll see how we go, but I think something along these lines where you can see a bit of deadwood wouldn't be bad. So we've still got a bit of movement in the trunk now if we do it that way. So I'm going to bring it from the back around here, and then probably leave it to down there. This side's going to go. And then here, at the top, I don't know if you can see there, Terry, I don't want to remove too much of this wood. So even the back here, I might try and take out this part here, hollow that out a bit, but I'm definitely going to leave some of this on the back. So I might hollow between this section here. So bring it in from there, but leave this part there and leave some of the part there. But essentially, this will be the movement coming down on that side, and this bit's going to go. So you might remember that this was a solid piece. It was a solid round piece of wood. And what's been amazing with this is I've been able to use what the wood has given me. So it's pretty easy wherever there was a little branch or twig or something like that. It's super easy to, and you can see how deep I've gone in here, to actually hollow out where that was. And so there are a bunch of little hollows here, which gives so much interest. And all I've really done is carved away some of the wood in between and gone with the grain. So you can see where the darker pieces are. This is literally the grain of the wood. So I've tried to let the wood guide me. And then obviously I've had to hollow out the back section here to try and reduce the size. And I'm quite happy with where we're going here. I'm going to be using the wire brush just to clean it up. You can burn away the very fine pieces just to make it look smoother for now. So this is the apex of the main tree, and literally I've just started with a nibbler, but you can see how easy it is with the bit to hollow out a trunk. It's amazing from that point of view, and it's just so quick and easy. So this one, I want to leave the part in the front and hollow out the back. And leave it, it's going to have to tell a bit more of a dramatic story. Again, this tree's obviously gone through some sort of hardship, and a lot of it has died back. And the amazing thing about olives where they grow is a lot of them are like this, is the tops will be broken off, or they will have dried, gone through a drought or something like that. It's pretty harsh in Africa. So we'll be telling a bit of that story, but with the nibbler, obviously I can't leave this like it is. I wouldn't, but even if I did, water's just going to collect, it's going to rot, and so that would be quite a nice way of hollowing out the trunk a little bit more, but that's going to take far too much time for our liking. What I do want to mention though, and this is a good place to mention it, is that there's no such thing as carving once and then that's it, your tree is done, because there's always going to be it's going to degrade over time. So that kind of brings us to the end of part 2. So I'm quite chuffed with the way it worked out. I'm very happy that we left this trunk on. I definitely think it's going to lend itself to the design. What I've done is remove quite a lot on the side, which opens up so that you can get to see the trunk, and that's great. So pretty much all the areas that I was hoping to get to, pretty much finished up. And as I've mentioned to you before, this really was the first draft. This is the rough draft, and from here it just gets better. So it's the ideal time of the year to carve an olive, in fact any tree really, because there's very little sap flow is still growing, but certainly not like it would in summer. We're not worried about losing any sap, the tree bleeding, so we are not going to seal around the bark where I've obviously cut into live wood. If there was something I was worried about losing, a branch at the end of something, then I absolutely would. But this isn't a tree that I'd want to do that to. And then obviously the other thing too is I wanted to dry off and age a little bit. And when you put some of the sealant on, all you're going to have to do is go back with the wire brush and take it off, which is going to damage it again later. So I find with olives I don't need to do that, and they almost reward me for it. They look better. So I think for now that's it. If you are going to seal the tree, or if you're going to paint lime sulfur, I wouldn't do it now either. I would wait for the tree to dry completely before it does that. And in drying, it's just promoting the aging process anyway, which is what we want. So another reason not to paint lime sulfur on straight away. I would. So for me, it's something that Terry and I haven't chatted about. I like, once it's all dry and started to crack a little bit, to brush it again, and then to apply lime sulfur just in the beginning. I don't necessarily do it every 3 years like some people do, but certainly in the beginning I'd like to give it the best chance possible to last as long as possible. And I quite like it in the beginning. A lot of people don't with olives. I quite like that stark comparison between the white and this very lovely aged bark. It'll be quite dramatic. And then it goes grey again, and you kind of get the best of both worlds. So for today, that's it. Terry's going to join me to wrap up.
All right. I hope you've enjoyed the part 2 today, and I have really enjoyed watching Richard work. He's done a great job of the carving that we needed to cover in today's session, and as he said, carving is something that's not to be rushed. It does take time. Dead wood out in nature would have developed over many, many years. And so we can't be in too much of a rush to try and sort of artificially recreate that. There are, of course, many tricks and techniques of accelerating it, but nature, just the elements, rain, sun has a very good effect on the dead wood that we're creating. But yeah, all in all, I'm very happy with what Richard has done. And so I think in the next session, Richard, we're probably going to look at wiring the tree.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, it's a bit difficult, with all this greenery, the foliage, to see what's actually going on. But I hope that some of the close-up views that we've done do give you a good idea of the work that we've actually completed. It doesn't look like much yet. But I think in the third part, which is when we will wire the entire tree and set the framework, the structure of the tree, that you will really see a much more dramatic transformation. And I look forward to having Richard in again for that session. And we'll probably both get stuck into the wiring and then position the branches, as I said. So, Richard, any final comments?
I'm looking forward to seeing you do some work in the next part. That is going to be great. But no, I'm super chuffed. And as much as you might not see from there what I can see here, this is going to be quite a special tree. It's going to be something quite different. And I don't believe that I've seen an olive quite like it. Certainly not with a vision in terms of where Terry wants to go and where hopefully I'm going to help him to get to. So yeah, it's an exciting project for me, and I can't wait for the next one.
Great, Richard. Well, thanks very much, and thanks for joining us once again. If you haven't subscribed yet and you are interested in viewing the next part 3, then please do subscribe, then you'll be notified. And also, if this was the first episode that you watched, then please get back to part 1 so you can see how we started off with this. Thanks very much for watching. Take care. Bye.
Cheers.